If you miss profitability by like $91 million, don't you think you could skip your stock options one year just so that on paper your business could show up as being profitable the year you're going to make it onto the public market? I just don't think it's a great sign because, as we know, like, social media is very difficult to make money in. It's very difficult to turn a profit in. Like, Twitter basically couldn't do it. You know, Facebook and Instagram can, but their product is crap. Like, Reddit really does have the opportunity here to be the text-based social media.
Hi there and welcome to Stock Club, podcast brought to you by MyWallSt. I'm Mike, and joining me in today's episode is MyWallSt's chief investor, Emmet Savage. But he might not be the only familiar voice you hear. To celebrate Stock Club's 200th episode, we've decided to offer $200 off Nexus for 5 listeners and unlock Horizon free of charge for 1 year. This offer is first come, first served, as it's almost everything we offer bundled and discounted by about 40%. For more information, click on the link in the show notes for this episode. Today's podcast is brought to you by Vodafone Business. If you're like us in MyWallSt, you'll know running a business is difficult. There are countless things to think about, and many even get ignored or simply forgotten about. That's where Vodafone Business can help. They've crafted a suite of tools and supports to boost your business's operations, and the best part is it's free for everyone. From cybersecurity to harnessing the power of AI, building a website, and improving how your teams work remotely, Vodafone Business will help you address the often overlooked but crucial elements for your business's success. To get started today, check out their one-to-one VHub digital support and advice service. You'll find everything you need right there. Find the link in the show notes or simply Google Vodafone VHub for more details. Now let's dive into this week's episode. Emmet, how are you doing?
How are you, Mike? What's the story?
Not bad now. We've had a few hiccups to start this pod. I hope it isn't as chaotic as the start was.
Yeah, because they're never chaotic, Mike.
But it is
the one-take show.
One-take show, mate. It is a very special show, though. We're not doing this. We're not amateurs. Do you know what I mean? 200 episodes of Stock Club. How does that make you feel?
Seasoned professionals. I don't know who are the greatest broadcasters of all time apart from us. I mean, Johnny Carson and in Ireland, Gay Byrne, but I think we're probably in the Hall of Fame now with 200 episodes, Mike.
Yeah, top 5, us too. You maybe throw Michael Parkinson in there as well.
In fairness.
Terry Wogan just got pipped.
Yeah, but 200 episodes, that's not to be sneezed at. That's a lot of talking.
It's a lot of waffle, isn't it?
It's a lot of waffle. I mean, I'm living proof that you don't necessarily improve at everything you practice. And well, look, I really do appreciate our listeners just sticking with it in the hope that someday there's a glimmer of improvement. So thanks, folks.
Park Harrington, the famous Irish golfer, said, experience always isn't a good thing because you remember you've got trauma as well. Do you know what I mean? He was saying it from a golf context where he's like, I know I should not hit it over there, but like this is kind of the podcast thing too. We probably missed the sweet spot.
Yeah, well, in sport you have a muscle memory and you can remember those mistakes you made, whereas with podcasting you're relying on your intellectual memory, which fortunately for me is absolutely really short. So I don't know what gaffes and mistakes I made over the years, and I've completely slept well every night since.
Okay, well, that's good to know. You don't have to edit it, so you don't have to listen to yourself back. That's where it really gets you.
No,
your skin.
never.
But to celebrate the 200th episode, we have a very special offer for our loyal listeners. So what is that, Emmet?
We sure do, Mike. And as you know, MyWallSt, we exist to get the world investing successfully. And that's the very reason that John Tyrrell and I founded the business. Very simple mission. We walked into a room, we took out a whiteboard, and we worked for a week on a mission, which was to get the world investing successfully. And it's never changed and never will. And that means that everything we do is jargon-free and steers people to build long-term diversified portfolio of quality businesses. They have to buy businesses they believe in, never borrow money to do so. We've a set of golden rules that we've always spoken about. But anyway, to the offer. So last November 15th, we launched the service Nexus, which we've spoken about here in the podcast on a couple of occasions, which so far has published 10 stocks, a very, very short list from around the world, something like 65,000 listed businesses. It's published 10 stocks. And by the end of 2024, Nexus will have identified and published about 16 stocks in total and a few other surprise bits and pieces. Well, the inaugural 9 stocks that were published there in mid-November, they're collectively up 20.88% on average. And that's just 3.5 months ago. But it's the one that's remained flat that I think is going to be a face melter over the next 20 years. It's my favorite investment in the world right now. It's the company I'm going to load up on today. Is this podcast is going out Thursday? So in other words, our Horizon subscribers will hear about what stock I'm loading up on about 4 hours after the podcast goes live. So to celebrate our 200th podcast, we've decided to do something we've never done before, which is to offer $200 off Nexus for just 5 listeners and unlock Horizon free of charge for 1 year. And this is not an offer we're going to regurgitate in a few weeks. And it's we've never offered a bundle, and we've certainly not put everything we do together and discounted it by about 40%. So for our 200 podcast, $200 off Nexus for just 5 people, and Horizon thrown in completely free of charge. And our plan with Nexus, as you all know, Mike, is for it to have published the most elite shortlist of stocks anywhere in the world by the end of this year. There's 10 in there already. I absolutely love all of them. They're incredible investments. So to our listeners, sign up in the show notes right now. First 5 will get that deal, and then we're closing it because obviously, well, for obvious reasons.
And if you want more information on Nexus, as we keep saying, Netflix, we published a podcast on the 1st of February. I think it's number 195, called Can AI Unearth Market-Beating Stocks? And that's a deep dive on the process, on the technology that's gone into it. And we break down one of the stocks as well. And we actually give away the name. So we're not going to give away the name here, Emmet, but what has attracted you to the stock you're launching today?
So the one we're launching today, not as opposed to the one I'm buying today, is that right, Mike? Is that what you mean? The one we're actually that's going live? And
the one you mentioned, the one you were confident about, the one that stayed flat.
Oh yeah, this is an absolutely magnificent business, really truly unbelievable, and it has all the hallmarks and characteristics of a business that's just going to keep going and going and going. And we spoke about IKEA last week, and it has so many of the attributes of IKEA, but is a brand that's not known the world over just yet. It has an incredibly astute level 5 leader at the helm. And level 5 leaders is a concept introduced by the management guru Jim Collins in his book, Good to Great, where he said that the greatest business leaders, he gave them a title, level 5, and their defining attributes are humility and fierce resolve. That's kind of, those 2 words resonate and resound in all these level 5 leaders. And in his book, Jim Collins' book, he talks about the CEO of Gillette, I think it was, who was so media shy, so avoided the cameras with such, like he was just did not want to be seen or spoken about. When he appeared on the cover, I think it was a Fortune magazine, he had a heart attack. It was so against his grain. And anyway, I'm kind of going off piece, but this particular business that I truly think is going to be a generational investment has a CEO with the characteristics of a level 5 leader, and those businesses just go forward with such strength. And this stock has grown and grown and grown. And despite that, I think it's going to continue to grow. Its market opportunity is astounding, and its execution is as good as you will ever see. And that's the stock I'm buying today in Horizon, and one that has happened to remain flat in Nexus. And magnificent business, truly amazing business. And some of the greatest investors in the world, genuinely the best in the world, have backed this horse seriously. And its largest external shareholder is a guy I met years ago called Chuck Ackery. And Ackery Capital Management is Chuck is Warren's bestie, and he's loaded up in this stock as well.
That's great. All right, so if you want to learn more, you can take advantage of our special offer today, just for the podcast listeners. That'll be in the show notes. Right, main topic of the pod for this week is the Reddit IPO. I think it's probably the biggest story on the markets at the minute. And to help us with that, we actually have a special guest joining us.
Hey,
there she is, Anne-Marie Kingsland. Welcome back to Stock Club.
Good to be back. I was in Mexico.
Where were you?
I didn't think about stocks once whilst in Mexico. The stock market didn't exist anymore. It was just the beach and tacos. So many tacos. So good.
You're our resident taco expert because apart from the fact that you're American, Irish American, you know what a good taco is. I brought you to a taco place once here in Dublin. I said, "That's nice, right?" And you were like,
Yeah. No.
"No,
No.
that's not nice. That's not good." So tell us about the tacos then. Is it
Yeah,
breakfast,
but
lunch, and
like
dinner
basically,
tacos?
and it's just like what meat would you like in the tiny, they're like the small little tacos, and then you just get like 6 of them. And
Yeah.
it's so good, and there's pineapple in them sometimes, and just like delicious salsas and limeade, and yeah, it was great, and it was warm, which it's never warm here. So like that was such a wonderful change of pace. So yeah, it was great.
And tequila, I
Actually,
presume you
no, I
had your
didn't have
fair
any
share.
tequila when I was there. I know, that was
Might
kind
have
of
to
what I
go
was
back,
setting up for.
Anne-Marie.
I was like, oh, I forgot. I have to go back for at least 4 to 6 weeks.
Well, it's great to see you again, and it's great to have you on the podcast. You've just increased the average intelligence of our podcast by quite a few percentage points. What do you think, Mike?
Oh, big time. Yeah, it's nice to have someone on that actually knows what they're talking about and isn't waffling. But
Yeah, exactly.
your intro is
Where do we begin?
Yeah.
Update us on the whole stock market, will you?
Your
Anne-Marie?
intro to come back and just sicken everyone sitting at home in
Yeah.
cold Irish winter with your tales of tacos on the beach is quite
Yeah,
apt,
sorry
I
about
feel.
that.
But
No.
not anymore.
Yes.
That's a very Dublin
Yeah, the
background I
ugly
see
curtains
behind
are
you.
back. The ugly
Yeah.
The ugly
Yeah, horrible
curtains,
curtains. Didn't
exactly.
get rid of this light fixture. Still there. You
We
missed the
miss
light
it.
fixture.
We're glad it's back.
Yeah.
Yeah, of course. It was kind of it has its own charm. It's kind of got this visual appeal that people think we've actually installed it and we made that up.
Yeah.
But no, that's the real
It came
deal.
with
That's
the
actually
apartment.
her
I
light
fear if I
fixture.
remove it, like the structural integrity of the thing will be compromised. And
Yeah, it's a listed.
it
It's
is.
a
Look
listed
at how
light
important it is. That
lampshade.
definitely came out of someone's like Tenerife second home. Like, look at that. Like the wicker. Come on.
What's the term? Is it a bearing wall?
It's a bearing light bulb. Yeah.
bearing
Yeah.
light fixture.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
burning light
Bearing
The
bulb.
whole the
wires-
universe
Load
could
bearing
hinge
light
upon
bulb.
that.
The wires have gotten
Oh, yeah,
into the
definitely.
concrete.
Yeah, and also when
Yeah.
I had to prepare this morning for coming live, I just like instinctually blew on the spit guard of the mic, like I don't know, like warm up the mic like it's 1925, and the amount of dust that was produced
Yeah.
from that action, it was
Yeah.
like an Indiana Jones relic. It was like I opened something and just thousands of years of dust had accumulated on the mic. It's been like 5 months. So like horrible.
5 months without having to record a podcast on a beach sounds
Yeah.
pretty ideal to me. But we
But it
didn't.
always amazes me how quickly things age. I know, sorry, we'll get back on track in a sec. But have you noticed like commercial properties when they shut down and it pulls out? 1 week later, it looks like the scene from a zombie apocalypse movie. There's weeds growing out of a letterbox, and the inside looks like somebody broke in and ransacked
Yeah.
it. I never understand that. How things just don't age. Unless you're cleaning things, they're basically going into rapid deterioration. So I think that's the effect that happened here, Mike.
There you go. You could say that for anything. You could say that for
Yeah.
your own body and all the rest.
Yeah.
But Anne-Marie, we didn't bring you back just for chit chat and Mexico stories. You did a bit of work for us as well. So we're starting out with the Reddit IPO. It's looking to go public this month, I think. It's targeted about a $6.5 billion valuation. It'll go under the ticker RDDT on the New York Stock Exchange. Be the first tech IPO of the year and the first social media IPO since 2019 when Pinterest went public. Just a quick glance at the numbers. The company brought in around 800 million in revenue for 2023, growing about 20%. Its net loss nearly halved to about 91 million in 2023. Much of its revenues come from advertising, as well as perhaps controversially some data sharing to train large language models. Think of ChatGPT. I don't know if Reddit is the right place to learn how humans interact, but maybe it is, maybe online anyways. Emmet, you got a chance to look at this. What are your initial thoughts on the IPO?
Yeah, well, the first thing is that I'm a Reddit heathen. Like somehow I've managed to never use Reddit, not once, not even opened it, which I think is probably unusual. So I speak, as I often do, from the balcony of ignorance. However, unlike probably most Reddit users, I did read most of their S1 registration statement, which is the form that a business files with the Security and Exchange Commission before they list their business, and it was filed there on the 22nd of February. So I got to learn about the business as if I'd heard of it, but somehow it's just flying around to left-hand side of my attention, a bit like Snapchat. I know that everybody's using it except me. But there was a couple of highlights I found in the S1, and the co-founder, Steve Huffman's opener, was really good. And I'm just going to read you a small excerpt from it because I think it was a nice little read. And if you want to take something from the S1, this is where the lawyers, I suppose, lean on at least on the founder, although I'm sure there's a bench of magistrates proofreading it. But either way, he says, I think of August 13, 2005, as the day Reddit really came to life. We'd been online for a couple of months, but until then, there had never been enough posts from users on any day to fill the front page. That morning, to my surprise, I opened Reddit to discover the homepage was overflowing with posts from real users for the first time. Reddit has been teeming with activity ever since. More than 76 million people on average visited it every day in December 23. They came to Reddit to participate in a vibrant community, a constantly evolving place where anyone, anywhere can connect with like-minded people and dive into any topic. The conversation ranges from the sublime to the ridiculous, the trivial to the existential, the comic to the serious. Whatever people are into or going through, it's on Reddit. So thank you very much, Mr. Huffman, for explaining to me what you actually do. And then
Now let me discuss your company in depth.
Now I'm going to tell people whether they should invest. So it has 100,000 communities, which is pretty good. I don't know what that means. It has 73 million active daily unique users, which is good. I understand that. It has 267 million average weekly active users, which is good. I understand that. Big number, a lot of people. And then it has 1 billion cumulative posts. But most important, Anne-Marie, being as you're back, it had the or/Taylor Swift, which I presume is the Reddit Taylor Swift channel, was the first to hit 1 million subscribers. Were you the first?
So sorry. No,
Are you
not
in
on
there
the
at all?
Taylor Swift Reddit forum because it's just a bit much. Like, if you ever meet like a really truly invested Taylor Swift fan, they sound like a conspiracy theorist. They're like,
Yeah.
guys, she held the microphone with her left hand today, which means that we're probably getting a new album next week. And it's just like, I can't get in that deep. Like,
Right.
I will lose my well-being. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's just,
Yeah, I think that's fair enough. I think Reddit is a home
yeah,
for
yeah.
zealots. You know, you can really get into it, and that's the beauty of it. I think these subreddits, which we'll get into.
A moment of that was not put in, folks.
Moment
We
of
actually all went
reverence
quiet and
for
looked at each other.
the Reddit threads.
I thought the
I was looking,
and there you have it, folks. That's
I was looking at
as pensive as we get.
I was looking at him and I thought I didn't realize you were concluding on the Taylor Swift subreddit.
No, I can keep going. I mean, I tell you what they say, you know, so one of the things that was quite interesting, I suppose, is that a bit like Airbnb, they've offered their community an opportunity to invest in the company, which I think is quite a good thing. And what it says in the S1 is that, and they have a full page in this form, which says what Reddit going public means for our community. And they list off a whole pile of reasons that the business is going public, you know, increasing financial support for the community program and creating more ownership opportunities, blah, 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 blah. But, you know, but like Airbnb, this is a business built on a community. So they're saying to their community, hey, invest, you can invest, or making a special mechanism available for that community to buy shares. And I think that's good. I think it's a self-fulfilling prophecy. But tell you one thing, having run MyWallSt for 10 years or co-run it for 10 years, you just have to remind people, and they need to remind Redditors or whatever they call their people, that ownership is a long journey and not a quick road trip. Because, you know, what will happen invariably is a whole pile of Redditors will say, yeah, I'll buy shares. After the lock-in period expires, some insiders will sell, the share price will drop. Very rarely does a business only ever go up from its IPO price. And you will find, I suspect they will find a lot of their community going, hey, I bought shares and you said it was a good thing and now I'm down. And that's a real human reaction. But you just know, if you believe in the business and you want to be a part owner, you got to go the road trip. So buy shares in Reddit if you love the product and you can see it being around 10 years. And a very, very simple question to ask yourself as an investor, and it's the most pertinent question of all when you look at a potential investment, is, will this company still be around in 10 years? And if so, will it be bigger than it is today? And that's about it. And if the answer is yes, yes, well, then it should make a short list of contenders for your investing for your portfolio.
Yeah, that direct share program is something Airbnb did it with its hosts. With the Reddit moderators, it's a very different animal. I know Wall Street Bets, probably its most infamous subreddit, is actually planning to short the stock.
So he's what? Hold on a minute. I have so many. What is it like? So how do you become a moderator? Where do you click to get the cheap shares?
So this is what we were going to discuss. Is basically that Reddit relies pretty heavily on free labor from these passionate individuals. So the person who manages the Taylor Swift subreddit page doesn't get paid for that, but is running one of the biggest online communities out there because of their passion. And it won't just be one person, it'll be a team of people or whatever, but because of their passion for that particular subject. And it's probably a risk factor quite unique to a company like this, Anne-Marie, where they're relying so heavily on people basically working for free. And, you know, the Taylor Swift subreddit is probably pretty serious business, but there's other subreddits. I found some obscure ones. Bread stapled to trees is a very popular subreddit. And
what?
Real bees fake top hats. So but if you just go in, it'll
just
be
code language. I don't.
No, it's not. It's not language.
Bread stapled to trees.
Yeah, it's people going around stapling bread to trees and then posting it into Reddit.
Oh, for the birds.
For the lols.
For birds, I presume.
For the Reddit fame, I think.
For like the last like staple. I mean, I'm sure they leave the bread there and the birds eat it, but I don't think that's the primary intention.
Wow, comedy has really
we've gone very abstract,
kind
of like the Dada movement in like the 20s and 30s. Like we're really just moving in a cycle. Like
Okay, I'll shut up because honestly, I'm hello everyone. I'm here to tell you all about Reddit. I know nothing about it except what they said in their form in the end of February.
But Reddit have put this as a risk factor, Anne-Marie, and especially because there's been tension there already from last year, the year before. There was actually a strike.
Yeah, there was, and the moderators definitely are a unique risk. It's important maybe to point out that like Reddit's risk factor section in their S1 is massive, like really long. It's been highlighted that it is almost double the length that like Twitter's was when it IPO'd, that Facebook's was when it IPO'd. So that probably is like a sign of the times. Like we are just more aware of risks on social media, but I think as well, like Reddit always has an air of risk to it, even if you're just trying to use it as a social media. So one of the main ones that they highlight is the fact that they are pretty reliant on what it calls voluntary moderators. You guys are right. Like effectively, a moderator of an incredibly popular forum is very powerful and is essentially setting the content tone that thread or community is going to set. And it's apparently quite a controversial issue. Like the people who will rise to the ranks of moderators, it's you kind of gain that rank the more you're using a thread or community, the more you're interacting with it, the more you're correcting people, talking to people, that sort of a thing. And when I was doing research for this, it's like apparent that like there's infighting in communities. Like apparently just the generic Reddit community for science, they all hate the moderators. Apparently they're too strict. People call them extremists. So it's it's hard. But the issue is that like as we know, content moderating is a pretty important issue for most social medias. As we know, like Facebook, YouTube, they all have massive censors where people are basically sitting and filtering the content. By using this kind of voluntary system, it is probably reducing the amount of money that Reddit has to spend on that system. But then again, you have these people who are voluntarily giving up their time and you have basically no control over them. And as Mike said, 2 years ago, they basically went on strike. They had some collective action, which is very popular these days. But the reason they were upset was Reddit's own mobile app is quite unpopular, or at least it was quite unpopular in 2020, 2021. And because Reddit has always kind of positioned itself as like, oh, we're not really a business. We're one for the people, that kind of a thing. For years and years, you would be able to use their API for free. So you could set up anything you kind of wanted using the data. And so it meant that many people, particularly high volume Reddit users, they were not using the official Reddit app. They were using secondary apps that had been developed using Reddit's API. And overnight, basically, really when Reddit began to make this turn to say, no, we want to be profitable, we want to be a real business, they said that they were going to turn off the free API and you had to license it. And the licensing fee is apparently extremely high. And so all of these like diehard Redditors were like, but I hate your app, and these secondary apps are so much better. And so a number of like extremely powerful moderators got together and they were like, we're going on strike. And the way that they did it was they privatized the communities that they were overseeing. So effectively overnight, I think it was an extreme amount. It was over 50% of them came off of basically search engine optimization. So if you were like searching a specific question about Taylor Swift, for example, it wouldn't come up in Google search results, which obviously dinged a significant amount of Reddit's organic traffic. However, they only did the protest for 48 hours. And when it ended, Steve Huffman was basically like, well, I'm doing it. I'm turning off the API. So you're just going to have to deal with it. So, it's this thing of like, they are incredibly powerful, but the way that they've exercised power so far, the company is like, whatever. But I could see if they were to get sophisticated enough and they were to hold out, they were to adapt like a French style of protest where they just keep going and going. Yeah, like they could effectively turn the company off overnight, like if they all got together and made the decision. As Emmett mentioned there at the top, I think some of the ways they're trying to quell the annoyance about Reddit going public is that they are saying to these moderators, hey, like you can have some stock before we IPO. So, hey, if you have contributed to this community over a number of years, like you could be financially rewarded down the line. However, if you like go on Reddit and see how people are taking that, like some of these high ranked officials or participants or community members, most of them are like, LOL, no. Because it seems to be that the general feeling on the website itself is that the turn to profitability that Steve Huffman has pushed is incredibly unpopular. And they're like, you're ruining this community. So I don't think giving them stock is going to earn you goodwill in any way.
We're going to touch on Steve Hoffman there, but first I want to give a quick reminder from our friends at Vodafone Business. Check out their free one-to-one support and advice service today to discuss a range of topics from social media tips, could be Reddit in there as well, cybersecurity, building a website for your business and more. Search Vodafone VHub or click on the link in the show notes. So yeah, Steve Huffman is becoming a controversial figure in all of this. And one of the big things to come out of the S1 was his outsized A package. So he's making about 193 million in 2023, the year Reddit lost 91 million. So very, very clear tactic you could take for your path to profitability right there in one go.
It reminds me of GoPro.
Yep.
What's it? But the guy was Steve Woodman.
No, but
you
are
to say that,
right, where it was like he basically, the company IPO'd, he took a huge amount of money out of it. And then he kind of vanished.
Yeah, well, so did his company. Well, his company didn't, but he took, as far as I recall, $400 and something million. And in that year, he was the highest paid exec in the world, surpassing Bob Iger plus Tim Cook added together for GoPro. And they're still trying to figure their pricing.
It is an important reminder that you cannot give money to people who surf because, because they will spend it. Like, there's always new things to buy for surfing.
Like, they don't want it.
It's funny. I just thought they wouldn't work.
Although the guy who invented Oak boots, Decker Outdoors, like he did well. Money, he liked having money and he made it work for him and everybody was rewarded. But anyway, look. Talk to us. Tell us more about Reddit, man, because honestly, the more I hear about this, the less I like
way
it.
His compensation broke down in 2023 was he made 193 million, as you said. 340,000 was just cash. And then his stock award was 98 million and his stock options were valued at 93.8 million. So his defense was that the majority, well, not the majority, but a third of it is coming in stock options. And his argument is that his vesting period is apparently really long, like a decade. And so he's saying, well, I'm just financially aligning myself with the company. This won't be worth anything if Reddit's stock doesn't do well. So it's all okay. But I would kind of agree with Mike. Like, if you miss profitability by like $91 million, don't you think you could skip your stock options one year just so that on paper your business could show up as being profitable the year you're going to make it onto the public market? But Reddit is interesting in terms of the way their management is compensated, because Reddit is effectively like reborn in 2018. That's something that was said in the S1 that the management has been talking about, like, oh, we didn't become a business until 2018. We weren't focused on profitability. But also Reddit was founded in 2005 and it was sold in 2006. So the original two founders, Steve Huffman and Alexis Ohanian, they founded the business and almost immediately sold it to Condé Nast, the magazine company, for like nothing, for like $10 million. So they actually do not own stock from like when they founded the business. It's all gone. So, they're not like Mark Zuckerberg, where you can say, oh, like he owns 50% of the company. When this IPOs, he's going to make an incredible amount of money. Steve Huffman doesn't own all that much of Reddit any longer. Because he's been back since 2015, he has been generating a significant amount of stock. But as of right now, he only owns 3.3% of Reddit, according to the S1. Alexis Ohanian owns very little, almost nothing. And so I do think the argument here from the board is going to be like, well, he's not a typical social media CEO. He doesn't own a significant portion of the company, so he deserves to have this. So down the line, he will become, a multi-millionaire, potentially billionaire if Reddit does really well. So that's, I think, where they're going. But still, it just seems so ridiculous on paper. And then on top of that, they also have an additional expense. If we like maybe set that aside and say, okay, Steve Huffman, you're allowed to have $193 million in 2023. They're also pouring a significant amount of money into R&D, which I know they're going through this transformation at the minute. Maybe it's for the ads. But as of right now, what are we at? For engineers and other employees engaged in research, design, and development, it was $439 million for the year, which is 55% of their revenue. If we compare that to Facebook, when it went public in 2012, their R&D expense was 10% of revenue. And then even if we go and compare them to last year, which is when Facebook was doing the huge meta build out, their R&D was 29% of revenue. And even Twitter, when it IPO'd in 2013, its R&D was 44% of revenue, but it had long talked about how that's too high for what, Twitter functions as. We need to reduce it. And when Elon Musk bought it, it was 25% of revenue R&D. So they have the compensation issue, but there is other pay issues down the line. They're spending a huge amount of money right now on engineers. What are they engineering? Do all those engineers need to be there? Is there enough of a significant transformation happening underneath for like an additional revenue stream to like make this make sense? Is it going to be down to 25% of revenue in 5 years because revenue will grow? That would be my secondary concern.
That's kind of bizarre from someone who uses Reddit semi-regularly. I can't imagine what they're spending that much money on R&D for. But let's touch, so you mentioned the other co-founder, Alexis Ohanian. I said that like a very Irish name, and it's not at all. I think he's our, I think Ohanian. He's married to Serena Williams.
That's how I know him. That's how I always think of him.
Yeah. So him and Huffman fell out. Is it in 2019, 2020?
Yeah.
And he's not anywhere near the S1. His name isn't mentioned once. What does this say, maybe along with the outsized compensation package, about Huffman? I'm kind of not getting great vibes there.
It's actually quite, like, when I went and did research on this, it's actually quite sad, because Huffman and Ohanian, they were college roommates and they knew each other for years. They lived together for more than 8 years while they were founding the business and setting it up and wanting to be close to one another. So they launched in 2005, sold in 2006. They've kind of floated away from Reddit. But then when Condé Nast spun it out and it became independent in 2010, Ohanian came back and he was like, okay, I'm going to run Reddit, because for him, it really was a passion project. In those early days, it was very much Ohanian was like the frontman. He was the philosophical one. He was the one who was kind of like, we're setting out Reddit to be this. This is what I would like for it. Whereas Huffman was very much the back end. Like, he was the computer scientist. He was doing the coding. He was kind of setting everything up. That being said, it was Ohanian who went to Steve Huffman in 2015 and was like, I want you to come back. I want you to be an executive at Reddit. So it was him who brought him back into the fold. And like, Huffman was a groomsman at his wedding in 2017. So they were very, very close. And then what seems to have happened was Ohanian has always been quite worried about the radicalization of Reddit, which I think is something that like the public at large, that's kind of their awareness of Reddit. So, you would always say that Reddit is more radical than Twitter and Instagram because their standards are a little bit lower of like what they will allow on the platform. And that became a huge sticking issue between the two of them in 2020 because in 2020, I think we were reaching like there's a number of protests. We had the Black Lives Matter movement, but then I think also we were just becoming a bit more aware of the impact of social media on like our politics, on the way we're voting, on the way we're perceiving one another and our government. And I think it became quite a concern for Ohanian, and he began to express worries that Reddit wasn't doing enough to filter the more dangerous content that was appearing on the platform. And he began to have those conversations internally, and he at the time was the head of the board, and I don't think he was being taken as seriously as he would like. And he began to kind of then speak outside of Reddit about his concerns with the internet and social media, and then Reddit specifically. And Huffman, I think, really, really disliked that because he was essentially taking what he perceived to be like interior business outside and talking about it in the world. And then Ohanian and Huffman apparently had like a proper feud over what about certain subreddits that Ohanian requested would be removed from the platform and be banned, just about kind of dangerous content, inappropriate content. And Huffman was like, no, because we don't remove content that hasn't violated our strict like content policies. And so apparently what ended up happening then is after that conversation was had, Ohanian said, immediately said, I'm resigning from the board effective immediately. And then he announced it publicly less than 2 hours later. So it was very much like, okay, I'm done. That's it. This is over. He requested to the board that his seat be filled by a Black person because he felt that Reddit wasn't doing a good enough job to ensure that there was like diversity within the board and diversity within the staff, which his request was filled. And that was kind of it. Ohanian just kind of like floated off into the ether and left. And for a number of people in the Reddit community, I think it really signaled a sea change. And a number of people have actually said that like that was the end of Reddit as you knew it, because this guy who like wasn't overly focused on making profit and was focused on how the website was running and how people were using it, he was effectively pushed out. And so I think him not being mentioned in the S1, I think like apparently since 2020, he and Huffman have not spoken. I just don't think it's a great sign because as we know, like social media is very difficult to make money in. It's very difficult to turn a profit in. Like Twitter basically couldn't do it. Facebook and Instagram can, but their product is crap. Like Reddit really does have the opportunity here to be the text-based social media. But I almost think you have to have an Ohanian style person at the front who's going to say, no, like we will put safety and community and content first, even if that does mean that like the executives need to be paid less. And I think like the actions that we're seeing Huffman take is someone who is trying to follow like the Mark Zuckerberg, Sheryl Sandberg type, like monetization, advertisement over everything, even if it ruins the platform, even if it ruins the usability. And so, yeah, I think it's a shame that he's no longer involved. And I think it is an indication of the future of the company, to be honest.
Yeah. And if you think about it, the nature of the business and the subreddits, essentially creating those echo chambers that can become so dangerous and probably need that moderation. Okay. I put it out to both we'll do a little traffic light system. I don't think we were that positive over the last 20 minutes, but green, red, or amber on the Reddit IPO. Emmet, as a moderator of bread stapled to trees, will you be investing early?
A big fat red from me. I have no interest in that. I have to say, just as I listened to the story there, Anne-Marie, if you even ignore the boardroom battle, which isn't very, which can't be ignored, the fact that I don't really have hands-on experience, and the fact that we're now living in a world where digital competitors rise fast and alternatives that you never knew existed suddenly just appear in your line of sight, I wouldn't be too keen on it. So I'm a red light.
Yeah, I mean, I would be the same. I think like they need to generate, like they're not like net positive at the minute, needs to generate more money. They're going to have to generate that money from advertisement, which if they continue to have this massive executive payout, they're not going to reach profitability. But then I think like I also really dislike that they seem to be putting an awful lot of emphasis on the fact that like Reddit will feed large language models. Sam Altman is the third largest shareholder in Reddit. It's alluded to pretty significantly in the S1 that they're like, oh, down the line, we will be generating money from this. I don't know. Like, I don't like it when S1s are almost hinging on the fact that, like, oh, some innovative technology is going to come around and we're going to make a bunch of money. But I also just hate the fact that, like, Reddit would once again sell out its users to feed a language model. Their whole thing is like people authentically interact on our website. So it's perfect for feeding ChatGPT. And it's like people authentically use your website because it used to be authentic. And if you feed it to ChatGPT, you'll ruin it. So I don't know. It just bums me out. It's just like another example of like a company in the media space. And we've seen so many of them recently just completely sell out their base in an attempt to make money for its executives. I mean, BuzzFeed is about to go bankrupt. Vice just declared bankruptcy. I would see it as like another one of yeah, the executives might make money over the next 5 years, but I think this is like the end of the business.
Interesting. What about you, Mike?
No, I'd have to be read as well. It doesn't feel like it should be a public company. Obviously, it needs money to operate, but in terms of the nature of the moderators and the what do they call it, voluntary, whatever, the unpaid labor, essentially, it's almost like operates like a co-op anyways, with the top honchos actually just profiting from it somewhere far away. Reddit could be one of the few companies where you could see them being like, oh, we're going to uproot this and we're going to go to Schmedit. And this is a user operated and run, and we do it like Wikipedia or whatever. And I don't think there would be a huge degradation of service. So yeah, be a big red for me as well. Just on the topic of IPOs, hopefully, well, I don't know how successful it will be after we just talked about it, but we'll see if there's an appetite there for tech IPOs or IPOs in general in 2024. Is there any private companies you've been watching, you might anticipate for an IPO this year?
I think that well, I mean, I think I don't know, I've been a bit disillusioned now. We just had that conversation. Now I'm a bit bummed out. I mean, I think the correct answer is Stripe, right? Like that's the correct answer. Correct answer is Stripe.
And the perennial answer since about 2018.
Because I think we had the same conversation like last year, and I think my answer was IKEA, but apparently you guys just talked about IKEA, which IKEA is never ever going to IPO because like it's just not in their nature. It's not in their foundation, because they know that like paying out to shareholders would ruin their business model. I think we need to have more businesses that are have that understanding to be like, oh, if we try to bleed money out of this, we're going to ruin it. Yeah. So Stripe, yeah, that can pay shareholders.
You kind of burst my balloon, because I definitely have recency bias. Last week, I spoke about IKEA, and in order to do so, I had to read up a lot about the business, and I was just absolutely infatuated with it. I mean, we all like IKEA. It's a great business. It's so hard to take down at this stage, because unlike Reddit and digital businesses, when what they've done is flat packed everything, and they've sold it around the world. So I love that business. And you're right, it will never IPO. But when you look at the new lines of business going into like the WeWork type spaces, you can say, yeah, it's going to succeed for sure. And then those delicious meaty balls, whatever they call them,
graphic description.
And for the first time after 200 episodes, we're going to do that again. Nah, what the hell? So yeah, I would go with IKEA, but something a little, I don't know. I actually, sorry, you caught me in the hop. After Emery said I can't say IKEA, I was like, oh, I was going to say.
Do you remember your conversation with Shane Curran from the live show?
Yeah.
Do you remember he mentioned a company called Wiz?
I do.
Yeah. So they popped up. I think they popped up on CNBC's disruptor list from 2023.
Oh.
And then I remember that conversation. So I looked into them a bit. Their cloud security, obviously, with Shane Curran, cybersecurity, cloud security company. They're kind of in a similar market to Palo Alto Networks. That's about $100 billion company. But it took 18 months to reach $100 million in revenue. It was formed in 2020, and by halfway through 2021, they're already putting through $100 million in revenue. So they look like an interesting business. I think their last valuation was at $10 billion about this time last year. If you look at just the public cybersecurity companies and how they've done in the last year, CrowdStrike's more than doubled, and I think is up 20% in pre-market trading this morning as we're recording. Palo Alto is the same. Zscaler is nearly doubled as well. So that one looks very exciting, and it's interesting I was thinking along the lines of this company was only formed in 2020. So the introduction of AI and machine learning and everything else is native to that business. Whereas a company as big as Palo Alto Networks, it kind of has to turn the the oiler around a bit to adopt these technologies, and they won't be as inherently built upon it. So that was an interesting one. I will be watching out because I imagine they would go public. They seem like a company set up to go public, if that makes sense. They've got big backers. So that's Wiz.
Actually, you just sparked one for me, Mike. Can I go again? It's a business I know extremely well, and I met the founder and his son and his CTO in a broom cupboard type office in the middle of New York 10 years ago, and it's DriveWealth. And DriveWealth are the B2B stockbroker. They kind of, if you think of Robinhood, DriveWealth have done what Robinhood did, but they extend an API exclusively to businesses. So they power the MyWallSt brokerage app. They power Revolut. They power Square. They power. So if you have an app where you buy shares, then there's a high probability that DriveWealth is actually the back end broker. And they, about a year ago, brought in a new CEO, the former CEO of Visa. And they are, I can see backstage what they're doing. And this is a business streamlining for IPO. I've no doubt about it. And I think it's going to be a very successful one if in fact that delivers. And I have a view of some of their metrics, which I don't think is appropriate I share, but I think it's a wonderful business. I think they executed it so well. I think Bob Courtwright, the founder, and his team did a great job, and the new team are doing just as good a job. And I think it's going to be, a big IPO. I know they raised, I think SoftBank put in some preposterous check, as they do, was like $200 million as part of a $500 million raise. Now, it was that peak valuation there a couple of years ago, where everything was a little bit, got ahead of itself, but that doesn't detract from the fact that it's a business that's still growing, has hundreds of clients, hundreds of B2B relationships, and that has so many brokerage clients you wouldn't even believe it.
Yeah, and brokerages, I know the business has evolved a lot, but Charles Schwab, Interactive Brokers, they're both doing quite well as public companies as well.
I actually have a fun fact. This is not, you just like a general, like, oh, what businesses do well? Are they publicly listed? Do they trade? And I was thinking about Lidl and Aldi. Did you know that those are owned by two brothers who hate one another? Isn't that crazy?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah. A revenge store, like in Curb Your Enthusiasm with the coffee
They're
shop.
like, who can be cheaper? Let's fight over it. How great is that?
Well, it's working out
like
for us.
Imagine taking your anger towards your brother and being like, I'm going to help the greater good and make food cheaper.
That's right.
The Germans are funny because Adidas and Reebok were brothers as well.
Adidas and Puma, yeah.
Really?
Adidas and Puma. Sorry. There you go, yeah.
Interesting. I didn't know that. And then a little more old world, but Waterstones and Hughes and Hughes were two rival bookshops. I think it was a fractious relationship, a bit like who were you talking about a few minutes ago there? Oh yeah, the Reddit lads. A bit like Hall and Oates. Do you know Hall and Oates? They're suing each other. They can't even go into the same recording. Oh, they hate each other's guts. One of them is basically suing the ass off the other. And I thought, this reminds me of Hughes and Waterstones. So there you go.
Your nerdy brain going everywhere to public companies. You wouldn't go to any other band breaking up. Oh, this is actually like those two book companies. Okay, Emmet, are you going to close us out with a elevator pitch? You said it nearly made it as far as being included in Nexus. So I'm excited to hear this.
Yeah, that's right. Exactly. It really was so close. And as I've said probably too many times, like, we really want Nexus to be the most elite shortlist of businesses ever published in a year. And 10 are there, and there's a few more locked and loaded to get published in the year ahead, subject to a few final checks. But one that very, very nearly made it is a business called Upsales. Now, before I explain about Upsales, I'd like to just kind of read a little piece that my co-founder John wrote in Nexus when it launched, and it was a letter that basically said, look, the majority of stocks finalized for this service, 5 of the first 9 were from Sweden. The reason I was not surprised in the slightest comes with a short story. According to a 2022 survey conducted by Eurostat, 46% of Swedish adults own shares, surpassing nearly every other European nation by a wide margin. Furthermore, data from the OECD, an organization consisting of 38 member countries, reveals that regardless of the criteria used to assess share ownership within nations, whether it's by individual investors, private enterprises, the public sector, or institutional investors, Sweden consistently ranks at or near the top position. The reason for this comes down to a few factors: financial education, economic stability, culture, a tech-savvy population, and the accessibility of the stock market. On top of this, there are strong incentives for share ownership. The Swedish government has a number of policies in place to encourage participation, such as the investment savings account, which offers tax benefits for investors. Over the course of several days, Emmet and I met with Swedish IPO advisors, underwriters, and investors. A clear realization dawned upon us. The people of Sweden invest in their native companies for a straightforward reason. These companies consistently excel. Swedish businesses strive for the highest standards because a significant portion of their future success hinges on the support of their own population. This creates a subtle yet potent upward momentum. So a bit of a mouthful, but I think worth setting the scene. So before I dive further into Upsales, just to tell our listeners, if you look at your home currency, which I think for most of our listeners, the majority would either be euro, US dollar, or the British pound. If you were to buy, if you look at the US dollar, it buys currently 10.35 Swedish krona. And if you look at maximum exchange, if you look at the exchange rate maximum for 20 years, it's at one of the best exchange rates. In other words, your bang for your US buck is at its highest. You know, there was a stage where you get about 6 kroner for a dollar. Now you get about 10 bucks 35. If you look at the euro, you get about 11.12 Swedish krona for the euro, and so on. So let's talk about the business for a second. So this company, Upsales Technology AB, its ticker on Yahoo Finance is Upsale, UPSALE.ST, which stands for Stockholm. It's a tiny business, and it's its size that really put us off giving it the green light for Nexus, and our advisors kind of highlighted that too. Its market cap is 772 million Swedish krona, which, if we just say as a rough rule of thumb, you divide that by 10, it's a 77 million dollar business. And what does it do? The business it's effectively like the Salesforce.com of Sweden, and it's a software as a service company. It has a long track record of profitable organic growth. It has that lovely curve shape that we all want, the Nike swoosh. Nike swoosh going up, exponential growth. And what its software does is it finds more leads for businesses. Businesses win more deals, allows them to grow their customer base and manage their customers. A typical dashboard for any business in selling. But when we look at the business under the hood, and when you kind of peel back the layers as to its financial health, well, for a start, it's been somewhat forgotten and dumped by the market. It's probably more of a consequence of its size and perhaps one or two issues that I haven't uncovered, to be perfectly honest, but the stock has fallen. But year on year, sales are up. Its return on invested capital is 36.6%. But very interestingly, return on invested capital has increased every year but one over the last 7 years. Revenue has increased every year over the last 7 years. And net upshot is that I think Upsale is a really positively interesting, tiny business in a country that has a track history of success, whether we're talking about IKEA or Spotify or Absolute Vodka or Apple. Like, this is a great country that produces great brands. And I think Upsale, it's really looking at its Swedish market. It just wants to corner Sweden. And I think Swedish businesses like buying from Swedish businesses for all the reasons I've explained. And I think it's a really interesting small cap stock on the Nasdaq First North Exchange, or Nasdaq Stockholm. And I wouldn't be surprised if over the next 10 years, it just went from strength to strength to strength.
Very good. All right. That's definitely one I certainly haven't heard of. I think if you've heard of it, you're probably in Sweden using it. I'd be very impressed if anyone else did. Okay, before we finish up, I just want to say thank you to our friends at Vodafone Business. If you're a business owner in need of a leg up when it comes to your digital transformation, get yourself over to Vodafone VHub to book your appointment today. You can find the link in the
Just talk to them. Just go into them.
Just go into your local Vodafone shop.
And look at the show. Look at the link in the show notes, but go into them and talk to them.
Sure, they'll know exactly what you're talking about.
They'll tell you all about business.
Okay.
And ask them what stocks. What stock should I buy?
I'll tell you to buy Vodafone. That's it for today's show. Anne-Marie, it was great having you back. Emmet, thanks as always. Remember, if you want to avail of the special offer we mentioned earlier in the show, celebrating 200 episodes of Stock Club, just click on the link in the show notes. You'll have all the details there. Thanks for joining us today, and we will talk to you again next week.